Well, I know it's not big news outside the Beltway, but I want to again focus on the dysfunctional nature of the Senate. We've seen it time and time again. The president now has weighed in. He accused us of engaging in 500 filibusters. The Washington Post gave him 4 Pinocchios for that and said it was an utterly ridiculous suggestion. The latest little round of statistics I would give to you that I think further illustrate the point about how the Senate has become the House and the House has become the Senate. When they return from recess, the House will consider the DOD authorization bill. Last year, the House had 172 amendments for the minority. No, actually 172 amendments were in order on the bill. Obviously, a number of them were for the minority. On the Senate side, we had two amendments on the DOD authorization bill. Since last July, House Democrats have had votes on twice as many energy-related amendments. Since last July, House Democrats have had votes on twice as many energy-related amendments as Republicans in the Senate have had on all amendments. This institution has been fundamentally changed by one man, the majority leader, who has the ability to impose a gag rule on all the rest of us, including his own members. On Portman Shaheen, there were at least 4 Democrats who sent out press releases on amendments they intended to offer, and of course they were shut out as well. So it is very, very difficult to conduct the people's business when the work of members is marginalized and ignored, and members don't have an opportunity to present their ideas to improve the country, and the majority leader uses the opportunity to impose the gag rule to prevent everybody else from participating. Hopefully the American people will give us an opportunity to go in a different direction next year and to try to restore this institution to its once a great reputation.
And just to, as the leaders point out, think about since July of last year, Republicans have 9 amendments on the floor of the United States Senate. That's less than 1 a month, less than 1 Republican amendment a month in the world's greatest deliberative body that we've had an opportunity to consider here. And that's not just about us getting our opportunity to offer amendments. It's the people that we represent. There are constituencies that 45 Republican senators represent who aren't getting their voices heard here in Washington, D.C. in the United States Senate. I just want to mention one thing. The President last week rolled out his midterm election messaging strategy, in which he said he wants to compare and contrast their economic agenda with the Republican economic agenda. Now, I'm not sure after 5.5 years of their dismal record why the President would want to do that, but make no mistake about it, that is a debate that we welcome. We hope to have the opportunity to talk about their vision versus our vision, because the President's economic policies have hurt jobs, they've hurt opportunities for American middle-income families, and they have hurt the middle class. Unemployment rate, you still have 10 million Americans who are unemployed, 3.5 million who've been unemployed for more than 6 months. The number of women in poverty is grown, 3.7 million more American women in poverty than there were when the President took office. And the take-home pay, the household income for Americans, middle-income Americans, has gone down by $3,500 since this President took office. So the President's policies are clearly hurting middle-income Americans, and nowhere is that more evident than with Obamacare. Obamacare continues to raise premiums, raise deductibles, limit access for people in this country, and the American people are reacting to that. 55% in the latest poll disapprove of Obamacare, which was a historic high in that particular poll. So we think that the Democrats here in the United States Senate obviously don't want to talk about jobs and the economy on the floor here. They love the opportunity to message, which is what the President said they want to do. And that's all we're seeing here in the United States Senate, which is why Republicans have only had the opportunity to offer 9 amendments. But we think every Democrat senator is going to have to own and answer for their vote for Obamacare when the American people vote in November of this year and make it very clear that this is a policy which they think is harmful to them and to their station in life and to middle-class families.
Well, the Democrats will have an opportunity this week on the floor of the Senate to deal with jobs, the economy, and the devastating side effects of the health care law with the tax extenders bill, because I think it's time to actually take a look at the medical device tax and truly putting forth in a vote an opportunity to eliminate the medical device tax. This is a tax that has already cost about $30 billion from folks in terms of the taxes being paid, and the impact on jobs and the economy has been that the experts tell us about 33,000 workers have lost their jobs as a result of this tax, which cuts into those who make pacemakers, artificial joints, ultrasound machines. So those folks have lost their jobs. We've also seen in that industry reduced expenditures for research and development. We've seen jobs going overseas. And when we had a non-binding vote last year, 34 Democrats said they wanted to eliminate the medical device tax. This week, on the tax extenders, they're going to have an opportunity. We'll have those amendments to try to eliminate this tax, which hurts the economy and actually hurts health care and patients in this country.
Well, on the gag order, the gag rule that's coming out of the Majority Leader's office, I did notice in one publication this morning that Senator Manchin's amendment on carbon, they thought about a lot and almost let him offer that. But my amendment on carbon, they said they really never had a serious discussion about whether that would be offered or not. So no real surprise to Republicans that last week we had gotten to the situation where in the United States Senate we were actually asking the Majority Leader for 5 energy amendments on an energy bill. An all-time low. This is even lower than fighting for the principal amendments, just 5 energy amendments on an energy bill. But the topic I want to talk about in a moment today is the veterans hospitals continue to see a growing number of problems around the country. Senator McCaskill and I sent a letter yesterday to the Veterans Administration asking them to look into allegations at the St. Louis hospital by a doctor in that hospital who says that on the mental health side of the building that cases are not being seen as quickly as they should, and every effort is being made to make it appear that things are being handled in a more rapid manner than they are actually being handled. So this is a growing list of problems that our veterans should not have to deal with. The Congress should not in any way let these issues go uninvestigated, and we should insist that the first step is for the Veterans Administration, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, to investigate them and report back immediately. And the second step is to see if somebody else will do it if the Secretary of Veterans Affairs won't.
Our veterans ought to be at the first of the list, out at the top of the list, and they ought to receive the very best care of any American in the country. And the reality is that's not happening. I indicated last week when I asked for the Secretary's resignation that for a long time it seemed to me that care for our veterans was increasing, improving, and now in the last several years so many instances in which care is fallen through the cracks and veterans are not receiving the care that they earned and are entitled to. In addition to the health care side, we have a tremendous continuing backlog in the benefits that veterans are entitled to and that they earned. This week, we will have Secretary Shinseki in front of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, 10 o'clock on Thursday. Since the conversation last week, the Secretary has asked for additional investigations of a number of hospitals and facilities across the country where allegations of problems have occurred. The point I would make is that in many instances, the Inspector General and the GAO have studied those circumstances. Reports have already been made to the Department of Veterans Affairs, and a question of the Secretary is, did he know? And if not, if he did not know what was in a GAO or Inspector General's report, why not? 2 pieces of legislation I'd highlight. Senator Blunt has legislation, a separate bill, Senator Rubio, specifically to the Department of Veterans Affairs, Senator Blunt's bill more broadly, to give any Cabinet Secretary or the VA Cabinet Secretary greater authority over the control, the discharge, the discipline of the management team of their department. One of the concerns I would have is if Secretary Shinseki would resign, that that is insufficient to solve the problems at the Department of Veterans Affairs. They are more than just a person. Having said that, I continue to believe that who is at the top of an agency or department matters, that leadership can and must make a difference, and it's not happening. And secondly, I would indicate that a long time ago, 2008, legislation was passed that created the opportunity for veterans to access health care in a place of their choosing. If they lived a long distance from an outpatient clinic or a VA hospital, they would have the ability, the VA must provide health care services to them where they choose. That bill, before it was passed, became a pilot program, and we are still waiting for the Department of Veterans Affairs to issue a report as to what the results of the pilot program is, and then, therefore, what the next step the department would take in response to the information learned in a 3-year-long pilot program. Certainly seems to me that, particularly for our veterans who are aging and live a long distance from a VA hospital or clinic, but more broadly, our veterans ought to have choice as to where they receive at least routine care. And with the number of veterans returning home from Afghanistan and Iraq, the increasing age of our World War II era veterans, the VA, if they're incapable of dealing with the veteran population today, what do we think they will be able to do within the VA system in the future? This is an opportunity for us to allow our veterans to access high-quality care closer to home. Thank you.
Senator McConnell?
Yep.
In the event that Senator Reid follows his recent practice and prevents your members from offering amendments on the medical device tax or anything else, will you encourage your members to oppose cloture on the extenders bill?
Well, most of our members voted to get on the bill, so the bill does enjoy support. It is always our hope to have amendments, and as to what we'll do in the future, I can't tell you right now, but our hope is to have amendments, and in particular, the medical device tax repeal, since, as others have indicated, so many senators have said that they were in favor of repealing it on a sense of the Senate resolution. Why not have that vote when it really counts?
Senator McConnell. Senator McConnell.
The news broke this morning that Senator Thad Cochran had taken his executive assistant on 42 foreign countries on 33 taxpayer funding hotels. Do you think that that's a wise use of taxpayer dollars?
You'll have to address those questions to Senator Cochran.
Senator McConnell. You mentioned that the amendment process doesn't mean much to Americans outside the Beltway, so why not just get past this amendment dispute on energy and move on to Keystone Pipeline, which is something you and Americans do care about?
Well, number one, the majority leader could schedule a vote on the Keystone Pipeline anytime he wanted to. He doesn't need our permission to do that, and we would encourage him to do that. He's got several members who would like to have that vote. I think our constituents are concerned that members of the Senate, both Republicans and Democrats, have been marginalized to the extent that their work is not respected. You know, they don't get a chance to offer their ideas on the Senate floor. I do think, beyond just sort of an insider discussion up here about the gag rule, it does have a real impact on the country when the vast majority of senators of both parties simply don't get an opportunity to have any impact. I think it's a disturbing thing. I hope it will become a bigger and bigger issue. It should become a bigger and bigger issue. This is really quite embarrassing that the greatest deliberative body in the world doesn't deliberate anymore. And look, it can be fixed. All the majority leader has to do is just quit acting the way he's acting. It doesn't require rules change. It doesn't require anything other than a behavioral change on his part to open it up. I can remember back when we were in the majority, we used to say the price of being in the majority is you have to take a lot of votes you don't like in order to move the process across the floor. That respected everybody's right to participate in the process. I, for the life of me, don't understand what the problem is. Even if you look at the politics of it, most of his members who have serious elections this year would love to have amendments because they're running away from the president as rapidly as they can and would like to have an opportunity to distance themselves from the administration. So even just looking at it purely politically, I don't see what the downside is. Thanks, everybody.